Hello, everybody.
When we think of who the greatest filmmaker of all time is, a select few names come to mind. We think about their body of work, but we also consider their impact on the film industry. Though we'll never settle on who the greatest of all time is, few have the resume, flair, and sheer talent as this man right here, Steven Spielberg. Over his 50-plus year career, his films have earned 35 Academy Awards, 16 Golden Globes, and his films have grossed over $10.5 billion at the global box office, making him the highest grossing film director in history. Not too bad. Still, in a career that has spanned decades and countless genres, one has to think, how does he do it? Today, we're going to look into the what, how, and why of this legendary filmmaker so we can hopefully answer the question, just how good is Steven Spielberg really? Born on December 18, 1946, Steven Allen Spielberg was the youngest of 4 siblings, son to his mother Leah, who was a concert pianist, and his father Arnold, an electrical engineer who worked in computer development. Though he didn't know it growing up, the blend of the arts with technology would play a huge role in shaping his style and approach to filmmaking. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. As a kid, he was already wildly imaginative, jumping from hobby to feed his curiosity of the world around him. When he was 6 years old, his parents took him to watch Cecil B. DeMille's 1952 film, The Greatest Show on Earth. The film melted his 6-year-old brain, feeling both thrilled and terrified during the film's iconic train crash sequence. He genuinely feared for his life during the scene, thinking that the crashing train was going to leap out and get him. Feeling equal parts scared and thrilled, young Spielberg caught the filmmaking bug and never looked back. By age 12, he was using his dad's Super 8 camera to make westerns and war films, even winning a state competition with his short, Escape to Nowhere. It was clear up to that point that this short, skinny kid from Arizona was going to be, to quote John Ford,
a picture maker.
His family later moved to Los Angeles, where he became an unofficial apprentice for Universal Studios, soaking up the comings and goings of a film studio like a sponge. Before long, after years of trying to get the studio to finance one of his screenplays, Universal signed Spielberg to direct 4 TV films, the first of which was 1971's Duel, which was about a salesman getting inexplicably chased down a highway by a psychotic, faceless truck driver. His talents were on clear display here, showcasing his creative camera work, use of sound to enhance the suspense, and ability to make the most out of a simple premise. Viewers, critics, and studio execs were impressed by Duel, so much so that they gave him the reins for his directorial feature debut, 1974's The Sugarland Express. While that film was hailed as an exceptional debut for a young filmmaker, no one, not even Spielberg himself, was ready for what came next. In 1973, Spielberg signed on to direct the film adaptation to the at the time unpublished Peter Benchley novel Jaws. With the added benefit of hindsight, we know that Jaws is one of the greatest films ever made and one of the most influential blockbusters of the 1970s, but at the moment, the production of this film was anything but illustrious. For starters, the animatronic sharks kept malfunctioning, mainly due to Spielberg's insistence to shoot at sea instead of a tank at the studio. The salt water in the ocean destroyed the mechanics of all 3 mechanical sharks, pretty much making them useless. Shooting in the ocean was a logistical nightmare, with unwanted sailboats drifting into frame, cameras getting soaked, and even the boats carrying the actors and crew beginning to sink. The making of Jaws has enough material for entire books and videos, so for the sake of this one, know that the shoot was a wake-up call for our man. After going way over schedule and way above budget, any goodwill he had with the studio and producers was hanging on by a thread. The only thing that could save him and his career had to be nothing less than a miracle. Basically, it was do or die for Spielberg. All Spielberg needed was one shot, and he took it.
Smile, you son of a...
odds and against conventional wisdom, Jaws was a box office smash hit, breaking records, winning 3 Oscars, and cementing Spielberg as a household name. The moral of the story? See the damn thing through, even and especially if you're costing the studio millions. It just might pay off, or not, but that's okay. Jaws was a gamble for Spielberg that paid off in spades, giving him the freedom to do whatever he wanted, how he wanted. That tends to happen when you're credited with creating the modern blockbuster. It also showed that Spielberg had the goods in delighting a theater full of people. He would follow up Jaws with another defining film, Close Encounters of the Third Kind. What it didn't have in Jaws' sense of terror and suspense, it made up for it in its wonder and mystery. It also started Spielberg's run with science fiction, resulting in some of his most personal films, even if he didn't know it at the time.
Your father was a computer scientist. Your mother was a musician. When the spaceship lands, how do they communicate?
That's a very good question. I like that. You've answered the question.
They make music on their computers, and they are able to speak to each other.
You see, I'd love to say, you know, I intended that and I realized that was my mother and father, but not until this moment. Thank you for that.
Close Encounters was another box office success, grossing over $300 million against a $19 million budget. He has that it factor, but what exactly is it? For this part of the video, we're going to look at the how of Steven Spielberg, what exactly he does behind the camera, and also the people who help him achieve his vision. The more you watch his films and the more you stay on during the credits, the more you realize and notice a few names consistently popping up. If one had to sum up Steven Spielberg's style in one word, it would probably be movement. What's now known as a Spielberg oneer, he usually prefers longer takes over frequent cutting to let a scene play out naturally. But because there's so much happening within a single take, you usually don't notice it. Long takes are nothing new, and other filmmakers use them to great effect, but what sets Spielberg apart is they're not that long at all. Rather, it's the information he gathers within a few camera pans. Take Marion's introduction from Raiders of the Lost Ark as an example. No cuts, just the camera moving back and forth according to the focal point of the scene. In this case, it's whoever's taking a shot in this here drinking game. Not only do we get to witness the game play out like we would if we were actually there, but the scene acts as a hilarious introduction to one of the film's central characters. More than anything, it's damn entertaining. When done right, Spielberg can cover a lot of ground and capture entire scenes in a fraction of the time than if he had to set up each scene shot by shot. In my opinion, there is no one better at moving the camera than Steven Spielberg. He also loves a good ending, though he sometimes prefers to end the film at its climax. As far as he's concerned, his job is done once you're a puddle of tears or having the highest emotional response possible. Anything after that, in his eyes, is usually overkill. 3 people have become the spine of Spielberg's work, in terms of sight and especially in sound. Editor Michael Kahn has edited all but one of Spielberg's feature films. From Aliens to Newspaper Newsrooms to Abraham Lincoln's Top Hat, he's the one who helps give those brisk camera movements a sense of coherence and tempo, knowing when to cut to the next shot or stay with the scene till the end. Spielberg started working with cinematographer Janusz Kaminski in 1993's Schindler's List, which helped usher in a more realistic side of the director's visuals without sacrificing the director's love for flash and style. Also, for better or worse, better if you ask J.J. Abrams, we have Kaminski to thank for the new wave of Spielberg lens flares. And then we come to the maestro, the greatest living composer in film history, John Williams. He's the composer of literally everything iconic in modern cinema. His collaboration with Spielberg has resulted in some of the best, most iconic, and emotionally resonant scores you'll ever hear. If Spielberg can achieve whimsy and tug at heartstrings with how he moves the camera, and if Michael Kahn can create a sense of coherence and and sense with his editing. It's John Williams whose music puts everything together.
Without John Williams, bikes don't really fly, nor do brooms in Quidditch matches, nor do men in red capes. There is no force. Dinosaurs do not walk the earth. We do not wonder. We do not weep. We do not believe. John, you breathe belief into every film we have made. You take our movies, many of them about our most impossible dreams, and through your musical genius, you make them real and everlasting for billions and billions of people.
What do you get when you put the creator of Star Wars and Steven Spielberg in a room? Well, you probably get a 1980s version of the A24 podcast. You also get one of the most charming and likable and iconic action heroes of all time, and when you cast Harrison Ford in the role, you can't lose. Raiders of the Lost Ark, the first of, depending who you ask, a perfect trilogy or 4 or 5 film series, is a love letter to old film serials Lucas and Spielberg loved as children. Spielberg's action filmmaking chops are put on full display here. Raiders is a globe-trotting, thrill-seeking spectacle, the American answer to James Bond. The sequels, especially the first 2, are just as fantastic. Temple of Doom is so chaotic and deranged that it's almost endearing, and The Last Crusade is a much more lighthearted entry and my personal favorite in the series. While the 4th and 5th films exist. That's it. They're fine. That's all I will say about the matter. After Raiders, as if he wasn't satisfied with changing the action filmmaking game, he shakes up the sci-fi scene once again with E.T., the extraterrestrial. You already know the drill here. E.T. Phone Home, the flying bikes, the amazing John Williams score, the Reese's Pieces product placement that inadvertently created an entire subsect of film commerce, the emotional, wordless, universally beautiful ending. Oh, and how can we forget...
It was nothing like that, penis breath!
Elliot! Sit down.
E.T. is that science fiction films for not just the 1980s, but for all time. It's charming, whimsical, scary, and so full of heart. Its final act never fails to bring tears to my eyes, and don't you ever say you never cried during it, because if you do, you're lying. What makes E.T. even more special is how it was shot. Spielberg scheduled the shoot in chronological order, which is super rare in film production, but in this case it helped the child cast to give convincing performances as the shoot/story went along. By the end of it, they were well and truly saying goodbye to E.T., both as their characters and as themselves. Spielberg later said that making E.T. made him feel ready to become a father, which, considering his parents' tumultuous divorce, is no small statement. Through the rest of the 80s and early 90s, Steven Spielberg maintained his handle on the filmmaking industry, even producing films like Back to the Future, Gremlins, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, and The Land Before Time, or as I like to call it, everybody's favorite piece of childhood trauma. Despite the continued success critically and commercially, he became a victim of the all-style, no-substance allegations. Though we know that isn't true with the benefit of hindsight, such accusations started to feel true during the 90s, but that all changed in the year of our Lord, 1993. As I just mentioned, Spielberg was at something of a crossroads in his career. He changed the industry with his blockbusters, but wasn't getting the recognition or prestige of his contemporaries like Martin Scorsese, Ridley Scott, or Brian De Palma. He had a decision to make. Does he A, make another career-defining blockbuster that yet again breaks box office records and revolutionizes special effects, or B, make a World War II Holocaust film that shows a more subdued, harrowing side of your filmmaking style, while also netting you Oscar wins and cementing your place as one of the greats? The answer for Spielberg was a no-brainer. Why not both? Jurassic Park was released on June 11th, 1993, and like his previous blockbusters, blew off the hinges of any box office record that came before it, grossing $914 million in its initial release, eventually cracking the billion-dollar mark with subsequent re-releases. Critically, well, it's Jurassic Park. At the time, we never seen dinosaurs on screen quite so clearly and up close, And Spielberg's masterful blend of computer effects with practical animatronics made those creatures feel real, whether during the awe-inspiring sequences or when it was busy creating childhood nightmares. But that's only one reason why 1993 is such a big year for his career. We get to the other side of the coin, where Spielberg stirred emotion in a way that he hadn't done before. I think the most personal movie I've made is Schindler's List. Filmed entirely in black and white, the film was a smaller, brutal, and harrowing look at the Holocaust and World War II. He directs here with much more restraints than what we were used to at the time, which makes sense considering his Jewish heritage and connection to the subject matter. As you would expect, production was extremely challenging and emotional for him.
We're told that when you sat down to edit Schindler's List, and you got to the scene where they get off the train and they're separating the weak Jews from the strong Jews,
men,
and women from men, and
children from mothers.
and you're in the edit room, and you look at the scene, and you couldn't take it, and you looked at your editor and said, I can't believe I shot that.
Though it was an R-rated and 3-hour historical drama, Schindler's List grossed over $300 million, a genuine achievement given the rating, runtime, and subject matter. It went on to win 7 Oscars, including Best Picture and that elusive Best Director Oscar for Spielberg, and in my opinion, his best film. Full stop. At the end of the 1994 Oscars, there was no denying it. Spielberg was one of the greats. For this part of the video, we're going to do a little speed run of the rest of Spielberg's career. Not because his later films are bad per se, but they largely confirm his legacy in the industry rather than revolutionizing it. His work in the 70s, 80s, and 90s do the heavy lifting when it comes to his legacy. And when you look at what his body of work consists of in those decades, it was going to be impossible to push the boundaries after doing so time and time again. In short, our man was suffering from success. But I'd be remiss if I didn't mention 1998 Saving Private Ryan, another World War II epic that showed the brutality and nightmarish violence of war. Its opening storming of Normandy sequence is another cinematic achievement, showing the frantic, chaotic, and ugly side of the Second World War. From a technical perspective, it's another masterclass of staging, blocking, and editing. Its desaturated and bloody visual aesthetic left nothing in the way of romanticizing violence, and is considered by many to be the greatest American war film ever made. Since Saving Private Ryan, he's more or less coasted on what brought him to the dance. Now, I'm not saying he's been mediocre since then. Far from it. Even his low points are full of bangers. Also, special shout out to AI, artificial intelligence. The movie, not the thing that's going to take over the world and take my job. If you know, you know. If Spielberg was hibernating in the 2000s and 2010s, he started the 2020s with the score to settle. West Side Story is his best film in nearly 3 decades, giving it his trademark showmanship and flair on a level that we hadn't seen in decades. It's a classic musical with the needed amount of movement, energy, excitement. He makes it look easy here, moving the camera with the flair and energy of his earlier work, made even more impressive by the fact that this was his first musical. West Side Story showed that even in his 70s, he had plenty in the tank and wasn't afraid to get more personal, or rather, autobiographical. With the help of screenwriter and recently frequent collaborator Tony Kushner, Spielberg started his next project, something that for a lesser filmmaker would have been a pretentious and insufferable self-serving film. However, with brutal self-honesty and that childlike whimsy that never left him, came The Fabelmans, a semi-autobiographical film about Spielberg's childhood and introduction to cinema. The Fabelmans is what Spielberg's filmography has been building up to. The pursuit of art, while a noble and necessary one for many, will tear you apart. It's a gift and curse that will shape your lives in ways you'll never expect. This is a film that's a love letter to cinema in the purest form, but also a warning for what a career in the arts will ask of you. Also, David Lynch cameos as John Ford at the end, so it's even more of a modern classic. Rest in peace, my guy.
And get the fuck out of my office.
Never let anybody tell you you can't do what you in your heart know you can. And the other thing is simply to use what you're using right now to get this interview, and you can make an entire movie on that device right there.
While other filmmakers may be more technically proficient or earned a master's degree in filmmaking law in lawless, no director has a better feel for emotions, can tug on the audience heartstrings better than Steven Spielberg. His flair for the dramatic and sense of spectacle doesn't just make an illustrious filmography, but it's one that shaped modern American filmmaking, for better or worse, but we'll get to the worst maybe down the road. Everything you see in a modern day American film that you like, more likely than not, is influenced by one of his films. Though he's by no means a perfect filmmaker, he can get too sappy and sometimes too surface level with complex ideas or events. He's kept to his strengths, creating a style that hundreds of films and TV shows have only tried to replicate. In the beginning of this video, we briefly looked over his accolades, hundreds of Oscar and Golden Globe nominations, and billions in the box office. But that's just the material achievements. Look at the man's Letterboxd ratings, that's the real stuff. But for real, that little boy from Arizona, with little more than his dad's camera and a love for movies, instilled that same love to millions, if not billions, of moviegoers, creating a generation of cinephiles and aspiring filmmakers. Spielberg's legacy doesn't bother with any superlatives, let alone the greatest of all time. He simply does it for the love of the game.